There's a particular kind of silence that descends when someone realizes they've made a catastrophic miscalculation. It's not the ordinary silence of an empty room or the comfortable quiet of solitude. It's the deafening, blood-freezing stillness that engulfs a predator when they suddenly understand they've become prey. I've witnessed this silence. I've savored it. And I want to share with you the 7 exquisite moments when your enemies, those who tried to diminish you, destroy you, discard you, finally comprehend the magnitude of their failure. Listen closely. This isn't just about vengeance. This is about something far more profound. The inevitable reckoning that comes when someone mistakes your patience for weakness, your strategic withdrawal for surrender, your transformation for defeat. The first moment, when their laughter stops. They laughed when you fell, mocked your pain, celebrated your supposed demise. Their laughter echoed in corridors, vibrated through phone lines, pulsed through digital messages. Did you hear what happened? Can you believe they thought they could succeed? What a spectacular failure. Their amusement felt permanent to theme a perpetual feast of your misfortune that would nourish their egos indefinitely. But then comes that first delicious moment when their laughter abruptly ceases. Perhaps they glimpse you in an unexpected place, standing tall when they thought you were still crawling. Perhaps they hear your name mentioned with new respect. Perhaps they notice your quiet, methodical return from the ashes they thought had consumed you permanently. The laughter catches in their throat, transforms into a cough, dissolves into uneasy silence. This moment might seem small, inconsequential even, but make no mistake, it's the first tremor before the earthquake, the initial drop in barometric pressure before the hurricane makes landfall, the subtle shift in temperature that precedes the avalanche. Watch for it, recognize it, appreciate it for what it truly is. The earliest indication that the narrative they constructed, the one where you remain perpetually defeated, has begun to unravel. The second moment, when their confidence fractures. After the laughter stops comes something more substantial, the first visible crack in their armor of certainty. You'll recognize this moment by the questions that suddenly plague them. Questions they never thought they'd need to ask. What are they doing now? How did they recover so quickly? Why haven't they stayed down like they were supposed to? Their previously impenetrable confidence develops hairline fractures. The smugness that once radiated from them like heat from a furnace begins to cool. The certainty that guided their every action becomes contaminated with the first toxic droplets of doubt. This is when they start watching you, really watching you, not with the dismissive glance they once spared, but with focused attention, with growing unease, with the dawning awareness that perhaps, just perhaps, they've misunderstood something fundamental about who you are and what you're capable of. They begin checking your social media more frequently. They start asking mutual connections about your activities. They create elaborate justifications for why your recovery doesn't actually threaten their narrative. But beneath these actions writhes the undeniable truth. Their confidence is no longer absolute, and once certainty fractures, it never truly restores itself to its original, unblemished state. The third moment, when they attempt to reconnect. This moment arrives with such predictable reliability that you could calibrate instruments by it. The message appears in your inbox with calculated casualness. Hey, just checking in, been a while. Thinking about old times. How have you been? Saw your recent success. We should catch up sometime. Suddenly, the same individuals who orchestrated your isolation now crave connection. The same voices that spread poison about you now speak your name with honeyed familiarity. The same hands that pushed you toward the abyss now extend in apparent friendship. This outreach isn't born from genuine remorse or authentic realization. It's a reconnaissance mission. A strategic attempt to gauge your trajectory, assess your progress, and most importantly, determine whether you pose a legitimate threat to their position, their narrative, their carefully constructed reality. They don't reach out because they value what they lost. They reach out because they fear what you've become in their absence. This moment reveals a profound truth about power dynamics. When someone who previously discarded you suddenly seeks to re-establish connection, it's rarely about reconciliation. It's about recalibration. They're not trying to heal the relationship. They're attempting to neutralize a potential threat. And their very attempt confirms what they fear most. That the balance of power has shifted, that the hunter may have become the hunted, that their victim has transformed into something they no longer recognize and can no longer predict. The fourth moment, when they begin to imitate you. Imitation may be the sincerest form of flattery, but when it comes from your enemies, it's the most revealing form of fear. Watch for this remarkable transition. The same people who once mocked your approach, criticized your methods, and dismissed your vision, suddenly begin adopting elements of what they previously ridiculed. They use phrases you originated. They implement strategies you pioneered. They reorient toward values they once derided you for upholding. This mimicry isn't coincidental. It's not parallel evolution of thought. It's a desperate attempt to access whatever mysterious resource has fueled your renaissance. To capture whatever magic has transformed you from stepping stone to summit. They believed your methodology was the reason for your failure, only to discover it was actually the foundation of your resurgence. And now, they scrambled to reverse engineer your resurrection, to decrypt the code of your revival, to extract the essence of your transformation, and somehow harness it for themselves. But they will always be one step behind, always imitating yesterday's version of you while you evolve into tomorrow's iteration. Always duplication without innovation. Always the cover band, never the original artist. Their imitation is both confession and concession, an unspoken acknowledgement that you possess something genuine that they lack, something authentic that they cannot fabricate, something powerful that they underestimated. And this realization eats at them, corrodes their self-perception, undermines the very identity they constructed in opposition to yours. The fifth moment, when their allies begin to defect. No one exists in isolation. Your enemies operated within social ecosystems, networks of supporters, enablers, and fellow travelers who reinforced their perception, amplified their narrative, and validated their actions against you. These alliances seemed rock solid during your downfall, united in their dismissal of you, collective in their certainty of your permanent relegation to irrelevance. But networks built on manufactured consensus rather than genuine conviction are surprisingly fragile, and nothing destabilizes them faster than shifting perceptions of power. The fifth moment arrives, when these carefully cultivated alliances begin to disintegrate. When the companions who once eagerly participated in your exclusion start finding their way back into your orbit. when those who bolstered your enemy's actions begin to reconsider their allegiances. It starts small. A former colleague reaches out privately. A one-time friend sends tentative feelers. Someone who participated in your marginalization suddenly discovers renewed interest in your perspective. These aren't merely personal reconnections. They're recalculations of social capital, recognitions that the tide has turned, realizations that betting against you has become the losing position. And for your enemies, these defections aren't just practical losses of support. They're devastating psychological blows, evidence that their reality isn't universally shared, that their narrative isn't universally accepted, that their position isn't universally secure. Each defection chips away at the foundation of their certainty. Each realignment erodes the social confirmation they relied upon. Each shift in allegiance forces them to confront a terrifying possibility that they've been on the wrong side of history all along. The sixth moment, when they try to claim credit for your rise, as your ascension becomes undeniable, as your transformation proves irreversible, as your success eclipses what they thought possible, your enemies arrive at a remarkable pivot point. They attempt to reposition themselves not as obstacles you overcame, but as catalysts for your growth. I always saw potential in them. In a way, I helped toughen them up for the real world. Everything that happened was actually preparing them for success. This breathtaking revision of history isn't merely dishonest, it's desperately necessary for their psychological survival. Because the alternative, accepting that they misjudged, mistreated, and miscalculated regarding someone who proved more resilient and capable than they ever imagined, threatens their entire self-concept. So they construct elaborate narratives where they weren't really adversaries but secret allies, where their actions weren't actually harmful but ultimately beneficial, where they didn't miss the mark but somehow in some convoluted way actually facilitated your eventual triumph. This moment reveals something profound about human psychology. The lengths to which people will go to maintain their self-image when confronted with evidence of their catastrophic misjudgment. But it also reveals something even more significant about power. When your enemies try to claim credit for your success, they've not only acknowledged that success is real and substantial, they've conceded that it's so impressive they want to be associated with it rather than opposed to it. They're no longer trying to diminish your light. They're trying to bask in its reflection. And in that desperate repositioning, they reveal the completeness of their defeat. The seventh moment, when they can no longer deny their fear. The previous 6 moments involve various forms of adjustment, recalibration, and revision. Your enemies adapt their approaches, modify their narratives, reposition themselves in relation to your resurrection. But the 7th moment transcends adaptation. It shatters the possibility of adjustment. It renders revision futile. This is when they can no longer conceal what truly drives all their reactions to you. Raw, unmitigated fear. Not concern, not caution, not strategic reassessment. Fear. Visceral, primal, undeniable. You'll recognize this moment through physical tells that no amount of composure can fully disguise. The involuntary tightening around their eyes when your name appears unexpectedly. The subtle change in breathing pattern when you enter a shared space. The almost imperceptible tremor in their voice when forced to address your accomplishments directly. These aren't conscious reactions they can control. Their physiological responses hardwired into the most ancient parts of the human brain. The instinctive recognition of genuine threat that bypasses rational thought and triggers immediate fight or flight response. At this moment, all pretense falls away. All revision becomes impossible. All narratives collapse. There is only the unvarnished truth that they tried to destroy something that has returned stronger than they can comprehend. That they attempted to erase someone who has rewritten themselves into indelible existence. That they endeavor to silence a voice that now resonates at a frequency that makes them tremble. This fear isn't something they experience about you. It's something they experience because of you. Because of who you've become in the crucible of their betrayal. Because of what you represent, the living embodiment of their most catastrophic miscalculation. And unlike the previous moments, this one offers no pathway to recovery, no strategy for adaptation, no potential for revision. It simply exists as the permanent, irrevocable confirmation that in their attempt to diminish you, they accidentally created something magnificent, something untouchable, something beyond their capacity to control or predict or influence, something that will haunt their existence long after you've stopped giving them any thought at all. These 7 moments don't typically arrive all at once. They unfold over time, sometimes months, sometimes years. They progress at their own pace, revealing themselves when circumstances align, when awareness penetrates, when reality becomes impossible to deny any longer. But what makes them so extraordinary isn't just their inevitability. It's that they require nothing from you beyond your continued evolution. You don't need to orchestrate elaborate revenge scenarios. You don't need to waste energy on petty retribution. You don't need to lower yourself to the level of those who tried to lower you. You simply need to keep ascending, keep transforming, keep converting what was meant to destroy you into the very foundation of your reconstruction. Your success isn't about them. It never was. But their failure is entirely about you. About what they couldn't see, about what they didn't anticipate, about what they never understood regarding your capacity for regeneration. And as you witness these 7 moments unfold, as you recognize each stage in their dawning comprehension, allow yourself to appreciate the perfect closure they provide. Not because you needed validation, not because you required their acknowledgement, but because there's a particular kind of poetic justice when those who prematurely celebrated your demise are forced to witness your resurrection. A particular kind of cosmic balance when those who underestimated your resilience must confront evidence of their profound miscalculation. A particular kind of mathematical certainty when those who attempted to subtract from your existence must instead calculate the exponential growth of what they thought they'd diminished. So continue your ascent. Persist in your evolution. Remain committed to your transformation. And as you rise, as you expand, as you transcend, know that somewhere, in the growing shadow of your resurgence, those who tried to break you are experiencing these 7 moments, these exquisite recognitions of their catastrophic failure. One by one, inevitably, irreversibly, just as you always knew they would.